The plan was to have 3 today, just not this 3. And then obviously we had to.
Okay.
We're going to get Steve
Glad I
on.
could help then.
Yeah, I know. Otherwise, it would have just been me and Matt. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. Not that I have a particular issue with it being just me and Matt.
No,
I just think that normally you see more of me normally, and I can't figure out why my camera position is different. Is it?
Have you been letting the children in the podcasting shed again?
Oh yeah, no, don't Doctor Who me. Yeah, no, the children have been in the podcasting shed, of course, because little Ivy is trying to be a little recording star. So she's.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she's done quite a bit of singing. She's been singing Annie songs in here.
Oh,
check your framing in OBS, because I can certainly from this camera angle see bits of the background behind you, bits of your film background behind your green screen. Your foam acoustic tiles behind your green screen, I can see them from this camera angle on Skype. So my suggestion is just check your OBS real quick and make sure they're not visible.
The people on OBS see a completely different camera to the one you see on Skype.
Which is why I suggested checking your framing on OBS, because I know you use a different camera pointed at a different angle. And so because I can see this doesn't mean the OBS camera
That's
can see
you,
it.
and that's OBS. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, I just, it's just a little thing, but since we cut off, I thought I would mention it.
All right, let's get going, because we've already started late. Hello, chat room. How's it going, guys? Just a few technical hiccups. So we lost Kyle, and we just had a random buzz at Steve's end that we couldn't get rid of. But, I don't think we'd have got rid of it even if we had another 20 minutes to get rid of it. So that's just, if podcasting was easy, I suppose every git'd do it, wouldn't they? Right. Let's have Matt as the big screen.
Okay. I'm not seeing the live stream coming up on my Missed Apex live stream search yet.
It's there.
It's definitely there. I'm watching it.
I'm watching.
I don't know how to find it. Why can I not find it? Maybe I got to go here. Hang on.
Let's have a look.
Yep, there we go. Got it. Yeah, it was buried
spanners.
under another layer is all. That's no worries. So I'm assuming I'm going to have to be responsible for the chat room content. So give me a moment to take care of that. Hello, chat room. So good to see you all.
Can you mute Jake as well? There we go. There you go. Matt's big. The show can begin. Let's go for it. You have to actually plug the soundboard in. Otherwise it just doesn't.
That does help.
Oh no, Jake! Oh, right, Matt, can you keep talking so that you're the big screen?
I'm going to talk some more. So you got my
I did ask you to mute.
How things take this computer. All right.
Love it. All right, as soon as Matt pops up as the big screen, we can get going.
Yeah, here I am. The big screen. The big screen.
There we go. You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast, brought to you by GTS RS Racing Simulation in Uxbridge, London, specialising in coaching racing drivers and thrilling the public using a professional motorsport racing simulator beyond any you've used before. This episode is called Seb Spoonfeeds Hamilton. I'm your host, Richard Spanners Ready, and I'm joined by Matt Two Rumpets. How's it going, Matt?
Oh, you know me. It's going great. I'm wide awake and not tired at all.
Talk about that in just a second. That show title was supplied by Matthew King on Twitter. I asked you for your suggestions. Here's some runners-up. Scott Taylor suggested Tifoldi, Christopher Fonseca, Mission Winnope, referencing Ferrari's new sponsorship. Michael Cord's Sayonara Drivers' Championship. Stephen Findley says Game, Seb and Match. Jordan says Land of the Rising Lewis. Then we had Sebastian Vettel and You Always Leave a Space. So Matt, how did you deal with this very weird start time? I guess the race was 2 a.m. for you.
Qualifying was at 2. The race started at 1.
Ugh. So what did you do then? You just stayed up and didn't sleep till about 4 in the morning?
Well, yeah, I kind of did both. For qualifying, I got back late from a gig, so I stayed straight up, and it was horrible. My race review was basically like, here are the Q2 results, here's the Q3 results, I'm going to bed, see you later. And then the race, I really thought I'd done a better job on the race, but then this morning when I was looking over it for the race in 60 seconds, I'm like, oh, Oh, look. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. There's no verb in that sentence. Oh, my. So I actually had to apologize to Summers because my copy was so foul.
Now I'm glad you betrayed us and post your race reviews on summers.co.uk and summersf1.co.uk and not on missedapexpodcast.com. I slept in on purpose. I am very good normally at getting up, but just with my workload at the moment, I went, do you know what? I'm just going to catch it whenever I wake up. And it was interesting because normally I'm watching the race and constantly like debating, arguing, talking to other people. To just sit and watch it kind of on my own and absorb it as an experience just on my phone in bed. Actually, it was a nice change of pace. So tonight, we're going to be talking about the Japanese Grand Prix. We ask how the race was won and lost. We debate whether Vettel's Ferrari drive is at risk. We'll also do title maths to see what Lewis needs to win and when. We're going to talk about the new leaders in Formula B, and we'll give out the usual awards. And then at the end of the show, we're going to play out with some audio of me and Chris setting up for a sim racing challenge with Alex Brundle at GTS RS in Uxbridge. We are an independent podcast produced in the podcasting shed with the kind permission of our better halves. We aim to bring you a race review before your Monday morning commute. We might be wrong, but we're first. We're also joined by Jake. Please take off that hat, Sanson. How's it going, Jake?
It's going really good. Thank you very much for welcoming me back into the podcasting shed. Yes, I know. In the preamble, I didn't have a hat. Now I have a hat. Deal with it.
Let's deal with it. Right, Matt, we're going to talk about the sensor issue with the sensor that the FIA put in the Ferrari car, and does it coincide with the lack of Ferrari pace and the fact that a steering wheel button mysteriously went missing over the last two races. But we'll bump that, I think, towards the end of the show. Qualifying was interesting, I think, defined by Sebastian Vettel slowly unravelling. We saw the threads of the string that were to be pulled later in the weekend as early as Q1.
Okay. I'm going to say that really you're going to want to blame Vettel for this, but personally, I think it all just came down to their choice at the start of Q3 and was very weather based in the sense that, and this is what I'm putting on them very much, in the sense that they gambled on those tires unless they just had bad weather information. They gambled on those tires. And I think it was a needless risk for them. They didn't need that much help. They just needed to be close enough to let the drivers do their job. But instead, by pulling your favorite, the button trick, and going out on the inters when everybody else was on the dry tires, they actually sank themselves because they missed the best chance for them to get a proper lap time in. And the end result of that was Vettel starting in P9, which of course became P8 when Ocon's penalty was enforced.
But Jake, some good news in Q3 was the Toro Rossos with their Honda engine, mightily impressive.
Oh, it was fantastic, wasn't it, to see that just 12 months after McLaren had basically said the marriage and honeymoon with Honda is over and we're going to move to Renault. 12 months later, Toro Rosso's put their cars both into Q3 with a P6 and P7 qualifying result. And the McLarens were 18th and 19th and would have been 19th and 20th had it not been for Marcus Ericsson's shunt. Oh, that is just appalling how the mighty have fallen. But yeah, it was great for Toro Rosso on Honda's home soil.
Yeah, the chat room has a question for you from Tim. They would like to know if you are Indiana Jones, and they suggest that if you are not, perhaps a fedora is not the choice for you.
Okay, well, I'm more closer to Indianapolis Jones. I would like to just point that out. That was a great joke for you, Matt.
Cool, that Indiana Jones has let go a bit, hasn't he? But Matt, yes, it was defined by the weather. Tell me a little bit more about that gamble. So Sebastian Vettel went out in Q3. There was a red flag?
Well, there was a red flag for Ericsson, I believe, that slowed. I don't know. I was asleep through half of qualifying. What can I say? Here's what I remember was that Grosjean got through Q2 on the soft tires along with the Mercedes, being the important point that I wanted to make. And for Q3, because the weather had come on in Q2, it had backed off again because they were getting these periods of on and off rain. And so when Q3 started, everybody came out on the dry tires, but nobody was quite sure what the surface was going to be. And only Ferrari were out on the inters. So either they get their weather information from a completely different source than everybody else, and they were hopelessly wrong about it, or they took the gamble that the weather that was coming would be there before the runners on the dry tires would get their lap times in, and they did not win that bet at all. And it was a foolish bet. They're in American football terms, they're throwing Hail Marys when they're adopting exactly the wrong strategy to try and keep Vettel in it, frankly.
All right, look, let's move on to the race then. Well, this is the part of the show where I rely on Matt telling us where the race was won and lost.
Right. So obviously, today's race, we're going to start with the start, where we always start, because the start is where most of the things happen. And what was interesting about the start to me today, I don't know if you noticed it, but it looked very, very, very much like Mercedes had a pre-planned strategy to let Hamilton get directly in front of Bottas. And I don't know if anyone asked them about that, but I'd be curious if you felt the same way when you finally watched it, laying in bed like a lazy person.
I mean, it just looked like the Mercedes did get a good start, and like Verstappen perhaps threatened a bit early on, but we know that the Mercedes cars do discuss scenarios at the start and do work together at the start. It would have been awkward, wouldn't it, if Bottas had managed to get ahead again? Obviously, you can't plan who is going to get the best pull away.
No, you can't really, but just judging on how they sort of angled their cars more than one would normally expect, it seems like it was going to be a team effort to get off the line and keep Raikkonen or Verstappen from getting in front of Hamilton for sure, and also maybe to help Bottas a little bit by giving him a car to follow through the turns. So that worked exactly as planned, assuming it was planned. And then I think we have to look at Vettel really at this point, because his drive from the grid was just astonishing. He had managed to get clear both Toro Rossos by the time he got out of turn 2. He was around Grosjean by the time they got to Spoon. And thanks to the magnificently clumsy re-entry of Verstappen when he went off, he was also by Raikkonen and in 4th place when the safety car came out. And that was all in one lap, basically.
That was hilarious of Verstappen, the way he responded to the penalty he got from that. I mean, God bless him, he does spice up races at times where he's clearly been given a 5-second penalty when a 10-second penalty would probably have been a little bit more accurate, because he went off the circuit, yeah, but the way he came back, oh, I didn't see Kimi Räikkönen there. I don't know what they're having a go. Yeah, were your eyes open during that whole incident, Max? You clearly saw he was there. You clearly
wait a minute,
basically banzaied to get yourself back into the racing line again. So a 5-second point was just a 5-second penalty was completely justified. But again, being Max Verstappen, oh, it's not fair. Why are they giving me a penalty?
So you've established blame actually there for a racing incident. That's quite a good idea for a segment. Do you know what? We're gonna do that, Matt. We'll do a segment all about whose fault everything is in just a little while. Okay, so everything went to plan for the Mercedes cars. Vettel did get a good start, and then a safety car.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much at this point we're into the Magnussen's car coming apart after his contact. And so they bring the safety car to do that. And this actually winds up helping Magnussen because he lost a lap by the time he pitted, but he got it back. But it didn't really help because he wound up retiring a couple of laps later. And then the safety car brings everybody back together. So now you have Verstappen right behind Bottas. You have Vettel right behind Verstappen. And on the restart, Lewis was off. He was done. Bottas was a little bit slow. So there was this moment where it looked like Verstappen might actually be able to get around him. But that moment went away pretty quickly because, of course, Renault. And then it was the classic Vettel versus Verstappen. What could possibly go wrong incident? And, of course, everything went wrong. Now, I know we'll probably argue about whose fault it was later, but the nut of it was there was contact. Vettel spun, and at the end of it, he had gone from 4th to 19th. And at that point, I wouldn't have blamed anyone for just going like, you know what? I think I'm going to record the rest of this and go to bed because it is very much over at this point.
Well, it's not the best track, is it, for carving through the field, Jake? If this had been Bahrain or China, he'd have been up to 6th very quickly and might even have been able to challenge further than that. But Suzuka is one of the old school, almost street circuit style tracks.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I mean, as a driver's circuit, Suzuka is probably one of the most impressive tracks in the world. But in terms of wheel-to-wheel racing, it's quite narrow. It's very stop and start. You know, you go into one fast corner straight after a slow one, and there's not really a lot of opportunity to build up massive momentum to go for a move, except into 130R. And we've already explained several times this year how the current aerodynamic setup of the cars make it very difficult to follow in dirty air anyway. So we were never going to get to see that pure 130R move through the course of the race unless it's through that traffic. So it's interesting. We have this whole heritage thing in terms of Monaco, and Monaco always pulls up a bit of a boring race. Is it harsh to suggest that Suzuka is a little bit guilty of that, I suppose, to a certain extent, in that as a racing driver's track, it's one of the best out there. In terms of providing an entertaining race for an hour and a half, it does sometimes struggle.
I think Monaco is kind of like the spearhead in this regard, in that it was the first to feel those effects. But as these modern cars suit more of the modern Tilkodromes, then you suddenly had Hungary falling into that category. Then Barcelona, Suzuka, all tracks that are great. Hungary, Suzuka, Barcelona, all fantastic, sweeping, flowing circuits. But we're not going to get that Grand Prix spectacle anymore with these cars.
To be fair, Bahamut Yamat has written on the stream there was more overtaking in Suzuka than Spa this year. And he is actually right. If you looked further down the field, there were some really good overtaking moves. In various different places. You know, the Force Indies were getting into it. The Renaults were in there when they were running. The Saubers were being particularly feisty on the fight back, and everybody was making rings around the Williams and the McLarens. So there was actually some good moves in the midfield. But I suppose it's interesting you made the point that, yeah, Hungary's now in that list. Monaco's in that list. Perhaps we're giving the wrong argument. Maybe the circuits are not designed for it. Maybe the cars are not designed for it anymore.
Well, you could go to the cars, or you could just go to the fact that Vettel went from being 4th on the restart to 19th. And so at that point, your race is going to be boring. I mean, this was a throwback race. This was drive away at the beginning and then don't see him till the end kind of race. For certainly for Hamilton and mostly for Bottas as well. All of the action was in the midfield, and they were busy covering Vettel and Ricciardo coming through the field because that's where all the overtaking was coming from.
That said, I didn't think that this was a dull race by any means, because certainly Lewis had sort of bolted off at the beginning, but there was loads of racing up and down the circuit. Vettel did provide a lot of entertainment coming through the pack, but there was genuine racing for position as well in Formula B, and we will cover the Formula B title later. But as far as the top 4 go, Kimi Räikkönen really should, with that machinery, be able to challenge those guys. But once again, he can't hang on to the tyres like the other guys do.
Well, especially not when he's missing the incredibly important aero-sensitive area at the front of his car that got removed by Verstappen in the first lap.
Oh, he lost aero, did he? Out of that? Okay, so I'm being too harsh.
Yeah, and like and right at it's the bit like right at the barge boards that directs the air entirely to the back of the car. So I saw that comment multiple times, and really, in this instance, I can't blame him because the car was unbalanced left to right, and it's the left front that takes the most. And so yeah, he was pretty much done, and you could see it in his lap times just following the incident. Once the safety car came back in, he couldn't even keep up with Max with relatively fresh tires, because the car itself was fairly undrivable.
Okay, the chat room's teasing me a little bit about my weekend appearance on the radio. I do want to confirm that David Essex is alive and well, and apologies to the whole Essex family. Wow. Okay, sorry. Jake, get in there, mate.
Yeah, the thing about Räikkönen is I don't really expect him to be impressive anymore, so when he isn't, I'm not exactly surprised anymore. The thing that was fascinating to me towards the end of the race was Räikkönen, not Räikkönen, That wasn't interesting. Bottas and Verstappen. Now, Verstappen was catching Bottas, but you could see that was one of the most incredible displays of not being able to run in dirty air I've ever seen, because he was clearly catching him, but then anytime he got near, Bottas was able to pull another 1.5 to 2 seconds away every single time. And it was just a pendulum swing, to and fro, to and fro. And I kind of expected there to be more of a challenge from Max, but there just wasn't one. And it just looked at times that Verstappen was actually weak every time he got close to Bottas. And that is one of the biggest problems I'm having with the current era of aerodynamics.
You're going to hate me for saying this, but the issue with him being close on the restart was that because it was near the end of the race, the medium tires had lost more tire temperature because they lost tread depth. So when they restarted, the people on the soft tires had a decided advantage. But after a couple of laps of chasing, it was Verstappen's tires that had gone off and Valtteri's tires had regained their temperatures. So the only reason he got close that second time was because Valtteri just decided to skip the chicane entirely, I think. And he lost about 2 seconds. And then he was trapped by back markers. So it would yo-yo. But he wasn't really, except for maybe the first half of the lap after the virtual safety car, in any serious threat from Verstappen.
And I don't think, is it fair to say, I don't think that Lewis Hamilton is really under much threat from Sebastian Vettel. This was a nightmare scenario, really, for Sebastian Vettel. If he still was holding out title hopes, and I think he was, because you saw last year in Mexico, until it's mathematically dead, he's going to keep pushing. So he obviously was still trying to push. But now, Matt, the title maths is very damning, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because he is 67 points ahead.
100 points left to win.
There's a total of 100 points, 4 times 25. You're correct. And this is going to be, if there's going to be any excitement at the front, it's going to be this. The points differential between first and second is 7 points. So in order to prolong the championship, which is where we are now, Vettel has to at least come second if Lewis wins.
In the US. Yeah, that's right. So that's right. So if he picks up 15 points for third and Hamilton wins, he loses another 10 points and he'll be 77 points behind with only 75 left. So it is entirely possible that with a Mercedes 1-2, that Lewis Hamilton is going to pick up the title quite early with 3 races left. Jake, we wouldn't have predicted that over the summer, would we? When people were saying, this is Ferrari's to lose, Ferrari are on a march, Ferrari have the best car by far, that we'd be talking about a potential Austin wrap-up for Lewis Hamilton.
Absolutely. You're right. I mean, to say that it was Ferrari's to lose was completely correct. And they went and well and truly lost it. A combination of Vettel dropping the ball, cracking under pressure, as he has tended to do over the last 2 to 3 seasons, and Ferrari basically just not being able to cope with the pressure of the situation. I heard somebody saying the other day that one of the biggest difficulties at the moment with Ferrari is that they're a little bit too Italian. Now, that sounds like a vague comment, but I do kind of get what they mean, because they don't really have the brawn, burn, tote, super team combination, really, that they had in the past that was able to help develop things forward. I mean, the guy who's running the team, Maurizio Arrivabene, he'd never done Formula One before he came to F1. He was a Philip Morris international man, and I'm really hoping that's a brand we're going to get to talk about in some really apathetic way coming into the latter stages of the podcast.
Oh, the new branding on Ferrari's car?
Yeah, the one they stole from us.
You have misunderstood. The live stream and the video viewers will see the M I'm wearing on my chest.
Yeah.
And that Matt is wearing as well. They've clearly stolen our markings in tribute to how tifosi we've been over the course of the season. I can't believe people accuse us of Mercedes bias.
Do you know, it's quite funny because it's got Mission Winnow written all over it, and it's starting very gradually to look like Mission Minnow.
It's not fantastic. So yeah, let's see. What does Seb have to do to still win this championship? Go on, trumpets.
Well, I wanted to take some exception to some points made slightly earlier, but in this segment, in my defense. In that, can you tell me who had fast lap in the race?
Hamilton.
Nope.
Oh, I thought you had a Grand Slam.
That was Vettel.
Vettel had it.
Okay.
So I think perhaps we could maybe be writing Ferrari off a little bit farther. And I'm also going to do a thing that I like to do and be irritating. And I'm going to defend Vettel a little bit here. Everyone is giving him a very hard time about all of these mistakes he's been making, which frankly, compared to almost any other driver on the grid, aren't really that many mistakes, but they are incredibly highly visible. But if I look at Ferrari sending them out on the inters, if I look at all the pit stop blunders we have seen from the team, I'm just going to posit that the real differential here is Mercedes, the team, and the corporate culture versus that of Ferrari. And that where we see Vettel making mistakes, really what it is he's having to operate in margins that Hamilton doesn't.
Yeah, I'm going to take all sorts of objections with that. Firstly, fastest lap is essentially not meaningless, but it isn't an indication of overall speed. We've seen all sorts of cars get fastest lap. We've seen Fernando Alonso going for fastest lap, for goodness sake. And the other thing is, I'm sorry, he has made a lot of mistakes, even compared to other drivers. And if you want to compare him to some of the midfield guys and say, oh, he's made as many mistakes as Perez and Ocon in midfield, well, that's fine, but they're not at the pinnacle of F1 in Formula A of Formula 1, fighting for a championship title. We can't compare him to those guys. We're comparing him to Verstappen, we're comparing him to Hamilton, we're comparing him to Alonso. The very cream of this generation of F1 drivers. He's making an awful lot of mistakes.
And you're going to tell me he's made more mistakes than Verstappen? Or Raikkonen, or Bottas?
Yeah, are those guys winning the title? No, Lewis Hamilton's winning the title. Sebastian Vettel's target is Lewis Hamilton. Compared to Lewis Hamilton, he's made a bucket load of mistakes.
And that is the only person who's made fewer mistakes than him. But my argument, and I will repeat it, is that the car and the team, are operating in margins where you as a driver will make more mistakes because they're more on the edge trying to compete with Mercedes, the team. So the space in that Vettel is operating in has less margin for him than the space that Hamilton is operating in. That's my theory of what's going on here.
I'm going to share my mad theory that I put on Twitter at about 7:30 this morning, which I have a feeling that the Missed Apex posse are going to throw every single type of vegetable at me for. But I'm wondering if long-term Ferrari's best option at this point might be to pull an Alain Prost and fire Vettel at the end of the season. Now, hear me out, because they've got to play the long-term game here. They know that Mercedes is still going to be strong for the next couple of years. There is a guy about to be sitting on the sidelines who, for the future, is part of the Mercedes plan. Hire Ocon. Now, again, hear me out. Go for the long-term game here. Ferrari's only option long-term to get in Mercedes' head psychologically is that they need to mess up Mercedes' future plans. Ocon is a secret weapon that they're hoping to unveil as soon as Hamilton retires or they get fed up of Bottas. So if I'm Ferrari, I'm stealing one of Mercedes' dark weapons for the future in grabbing Ocon while he's strong, while he's coming through. You can put them both together, Ocon and Leclerc, to make a super team. I'm convinced that Leclerc will smoke Vettel next year. He'll make him look embarrassing, even more so than he is now. So why not just mess up Mercedes' plans for the future, get in their heads, and really shake things up a little bit?
Trumpets, time to sack Vettel.
No.
No?
No, absolutely not. You'd have to be out of your mind. Okay, so tell me who has the experience of the car and who's going to walk in and do a better job.
I didn't say they would do a better job. He would do an equal job to Leclerc. That's what I'm saying. What you need at the moment is a guy who's not going to drop the ball and cost you 3 victories in a season. Okay, the guys may not be able to put you in that position straight away, but when you're made to look average, when you're starting towards the front end of the field one weekend, and then you can't even bring the cars home within half a minute of Lewis Hamilton the next, something's got to give. And you can't just keep pointing at the management. The management aren't going to blame themselves. They're going to blame one of the chief factors. And if Vettel's looking average and half-assed, apologies, I don't know if that's a word we can use, but that is, maybe the Italian media, on the pressure they're putting on Ferrari and the way Ferrari have worked historically, maybe Vettel's got to go.
You say that, but I will put it to you again. The issue you really bring up is management's not going to blame themselves. And I think this is perhaps a carryover from Ferrari's operation versus Mercedes. But there was an interesting interview with Toto Wolff in which he says, we sit down every Monday morning, and we have an open and free conversation about where mistakes were made, how they're going to be fixed. And nobody gets blamed. It's about solving the problem. It's about identifying problems that occurred and solving them. So no one's going to lose their job if they say, I made a mistake. And I think the difference between that culture and what's going on at Ferrari, which admittedly is probably a carryover from a long, long time ago, is ultimately where we're seeing the difference between Mercedes and Ferrari, the teams, and in their performance. Everyone at Mercedes feels very comfortable and confident doing what they do. They don't feel like they're at risk if they speak up and say, I think this was a mistake and here's why. And I'm not sure that's the case at Ferrari. And I think that's the difference. And that's what we're really talking about.
You seem very kind of keen to let Sebastian Vettel off the hook. But here's what I'm seeing. He's blown 2 titles. He's blown 2017 and he's blown 2018. Obviously, yes, the team have made some bad calls. Mercedes got some calls earlier on in the season wrong too. But no, to say that Sebastian Vettel hasn't played his part in this is utterly, utterly ridiculous. Because Hockenheim, 25 points. Monza, a ridiculous, impatient move. Paul Ricard taking himself out against Bottas, not even the guy he's fighting for the championship with. And today, qualifying Q1, didn't he make a spin in Q1 as well, making life difficult for himself? And then in the race, making life difficult for himself twice. And I really can't see the defence for Sebastian Vettel. I know you're being called the sensationalist, Jake, in the chat room, but I don't think what you're saying is really insane, because what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing and expecting the result to change? What do you think is going to happen next year? Is he suddenly, Jake, next year going to be able to stand up to the pressure of a championship fight against Lewis Hamilton? I don't think so. I don't think your suggestion is that mad.
The thing is, he looks at the moment as if he can't win a championship unless he's in a Red Bull that is designed around him. You know, he's won 4 world titles in a Red Bull, which is essentially, up until that point, a drinks company with no history. And everything was built for him. Everything was built around him. Mark Webber got the second grade of everything. His career was wasted as a result. And now that he's gone into Ferrari, which is much more about Ferrari, no driver is bigger than Ferrari. Vettel was bigger than Red Bull to a certain degree when he was with them. It was all about him. He won 4 titles on the trot. He was the golden boy. The second he got beaten by Ricciardo, I'm fed up. I've had enough. I'm going to Ferrari. I can win there. In 4 years, he's won a few races brilliantly, and he's looked like a spoilt, petulant child the rest of that time. That is not the mark of a great champion. He hasn't even looked close to world class in the last 36 months.
All right, Matt, let's put this in slightly less sensationalist terms. Let's assume Vettel isn't going to get sacked at the end of this season. I'm happy to put a shiny penny against your shiny penny that Leclerc is ahead of Sebastian Vettel halfway through the season, because I know you think he's going to take some time to settle in. I can't see any properly fast driver not being on pace quickly against Sebastian Vettel. Vettel is entirely beatable.
I don't know. I just watched that drive off the grid around all those cars, and I would be a little more circumspect in my championship of Leclerc. I think if you give him a year, or possibly 2, I would agree with you. But I would happily say let's look at the first half of the season and see whose shiny penny goes where.
Okay, let's have a look at some of the championship connotations then. So yes, Sebastian Vettel basically needs 100 points. And if he gets those 100 points that are on offer, Lewis Hamilton just needs 33 points to win. And I think if Sebastian Vettel wins the 4 races, I know this is all a bit noddy, they will be level on 9 wins each. Lewis Hamilton has more second places. So actually, Lewis Hamilton only needs 33 points to draw level, assuming Sebastian Vettel wins them all. But in reality, he can get 2 seconds and win the championship. He can also get 2 fifths and 2 sixths. So that's a bit of an example of what Lewis Hamilton has in front of him, which is pretty much an open goal. Can't see it going any other way. What we can do, though, and that does have a bit more of a competitive streak, is establish blame.
Whose fault is it?
So for those of you new to the show, and there are many of you, welcome to the blame culture at Missed Apex podcast. We're not Mercedes. We don't sit around and go, hey guys, it's all okay. Just come in. Let's solve the problem. Let's not assign blame. No, this is based more on my house and the fact that my wife would want to establish who set fire to things before us actually leaving the house to save ourselves from the fire. We would have to establish blame. And when we established it was my fault, then we could leave the house. So we have some incidents. We don't have racing incidents. We don't accept those things. We don't accept 50-50 blame. We must assign blame. So let's start with Max Verstappen and Kimi Räikkönen. I'm going to kick this off because basically on Twitter I've already had preemptive words from some Dutch listeners who've said, I don't think I'm going to tune in because you're just going to slate Max Verstappen. Well, yes, I think so. In this incident, I'm pretty sure there's a few people who are gonna put this on Kimi Räikkönen. However, I think the baseline is the fact is Max Verstappen left the track. He left the track, and then he not only rejoined the track, he went all the way across from one side of the track to the other side of the track, where a red car was occupying part of that track and shoved him off and made contact. I don't understand why Max Verstappen would have thought that isn't a penalty. I heard, the commentary was saying, well, what more could he have done? Well, I mean, you could slow down. He only had that trajectory because he was accelerating out the corner. Sure, if you want to put your foot down to rejoin the track, then yes, it is very hard to get a good steering lock. However, had you slowed down and accepted, I'm off the track, I need to rejoin the track without hitting another car, then no, I don't think you could have expected Kimi Räikkönen to have slowed down to allow Max Verstappen to rejoin the track at whatever pace he wanted. Jake?
That all sounds well and good. I can simplify the argument. It's clearly Max Verstappen's fault because last week when I was on F1 2018 online, some moron did that to me in exactly the same place, in exactly the same corner, and he got a 5-second penalty. End of. Max's fault.
John Pitts, do you have a non-Xbox solution to this? Whose fault is it?
Yeah, but sadly, this is a boring one because I think we're all going to pretty much agree that, well, Verstappen was the one rejoining the track. Therefore, the consequences of his rejoining are going to pretty much be on his shoulders. I mean, it's not like Raikkonen drove into him from behind after he was on the track and pointed the correct direction. He rejoined the track and more or less drove into Raikkonen. So, there you go. It seems fairly simple.
Okay, so let's see if anyone in the chat room is objecting. Have we lost all our Dutch listeners? Go on, Matt.
Well, Lord Nuker would like to make the point that as a Verstappen fan, that is very clear in the situation, Ericsson was 1,000% at fault.
Darn you, Ericsson. Not the only incident he had in this race as well. And Toro Loco, that radio from Max made me clean out my ears. Wishy Egg, fair penalty. And let's have a look. Is anybody here thinking that it wasn't Verstappen's fault? Because the Sky commentary, De Resta, certainly seemed to absolve him of blame. I don't know what anybody expects Kimi Räikkönen to have done. But anyway, right. Steve Bridge, I like that. 2 kinds of people I can't stand. People intolerant of other people's cultures and the Dutch. That is, of course, a quote from Austin Powers. That's right. So it's not me saying that. Okay, let's move on to the next. Whose fault is this? Magnussen versus Leclerc. Now, this is quite an interesting one. I'm not going to kick this off. Go on then, Jake. Who do you put the blame on? Leclerc was trying to overtake Magnussen. Magnussen jinked right, and there was contact.
It's a difficult one. And this one is the closest incident in the race that could be a racing incident, but we're not going to do that. We're not going to sit on the fence. I would say it's probably K-Mag's fault because he was just a little bit too aggressive in the way he moved across. You've got to take into account that he will know perfectly well that Leclerc will have DRS open. He will have that much of a power advantage. I think it was just a little bit too cheeky from K-Mag, to be honest. And I just don't see how you can argue anything other. It's a tough one. It's a bit of a tough call, but I think K-Mag doesn't really know how long or how wide his car is at times.
Let's find out what Trumpets thinks, because the chat room is all blaming Kevin Magnussen, which is making me scared because I might have a contrary opinion. But wow, they not only are they blaming Kevin Magnussen, they really don't like him either.
They don't like him, but that's because he is, of course, basically an American at this point. So, Jake, tell me, you mentioned DRS, correct?
Yes, I did.
What lap did this incident occur on?
Was it 3 or was it 2? It might have been 2. Oh, yeah, good point. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so
But
no DRS. Okay.
even more so to blame K-Mag then. Even more so, because if he had that much of a speed difference, then without DRS, if he had that much of a speed difference, then yeah, okay, that doesn't even put it beyond. If DRS was open, I could have said maybe questionable judgment, but no, the fact that he had that much more of a speed advantage over K-Mag, it's definitely K-Mag's fault.
And in fact, had Magnussen not just passed Leclerc?
Well, yes, he had.
Yes, in fact, he had. And
this is like a court case.
What exactly are the
It
rules
is.
about this again? Was he in a braking zone when he moved?
No, he was not.
No, he wasn't, in fact. And now I'm going to ask you the critical question. Because the stewards happen to look at the video evidence. Do you know the differential in frames between Leclerc's move and Magnussen's move?
Okay, you can have the negatives.
You can just go ahead and say, I don't know.
I was in that hotel room.
No. What was the question?
Do you know the difference in video frames between when Leclerc moved to the right and when Magnussen moved to the right?
It was only about 5 frames, wasn't it?
It was exactly one video frame.
Was it really only 1 frame?
That's according to Charlie Whiting.
Right. Okay.
So I'm going to go with the onboard from Leclerc made it look a lot worse than it was. I'm going to go with Magnussen had every right to make that move and that they made that move almost simultaneously. And at this point, we have one car hitting another from behind. Now, I don't know about you Spanners or how the police work over there, but over here, if I rear end someone and say, oh, but they changed lanes, guess who's getting the ticket anyway?
Wow. I don't know about
so
you, Jake, but I feel attacked, and I agree with him.
I know this is harsh. I wasn't I knew in this show we had to tell the truth and the whole truth, but I didn't expect we had to do nothing but the truth. Come on.
So here's my take on it. It's interesting to hear about the gap in the video frames, but when I was looking at it frame by frame, and I did, and Kedar's right there. I am Mag Fosi. I am a fan of Kevin Magnussen. So yes, of course, I had a natural bias to try and defend him, which is why I went frame by frame through that video. And what I thought was interesting. Go on, Jake.
I was just going to say, how is it that Charlie Whiting isn't as good as assessing these incidents frame for frame as Matt Trumpets is? I think it might be time for Charlie Whiting to step aside.
Well, I think you'll find that Charlie Whiting actually agreed with Matt because he gave no penalty. But the thing I was looking at was the grid positions and how much they moved. So I don't think either Magnussen or Leclerc actually moved a full car's width over. So the amount of movement was actually quite small. But what did it for me is simply this. Leclerc left his move incredibly late. Like he moved, he came up behind and he made a very late decision to move to the right. And actually, as it happened, I think if Magnussen hadn't have moved, he might still have been in danger of hitting him. But if we say Magnussen must not move and it was too late, and I don't think it was too late because they moved nearly together, what you're effectively saying is if a car is coming up behind you, and he leaves his overtaking move so late that when you react, it's deemed as having moved too late and being dangerous. We're essentially saying, if you come up behind somebody, don't make your move till late, and then the guy in front won't be allowed to move or will be penalised to move. So you're cutting out racing by telling Magnussen that he can't defend. Of course, he had no other choice, but he's got one move to defend. Then he can move back to the racing line. And that's what he did. He waited for Leclerc to make his move, and then he matched it. That's racing.
Okay, I concede. I need to change my answer. It was Marcus Ericsson's fault.
Wow, that's weak. I can't believe you capitulated so quickly. Trumpet.
I can't deal with the adrenaline.
You softened him up.
But how many frames a second are they going with this video? Let's take the lowest possible. Let's go like 24 frames a second. So 24 frames a second, that's what, like 40 milliseconds more or less per frame? Just call it 25 to make the math simple. And at 40 milliseconds, do you even think Magnussen was reacting? I think they had the same idea and did about the same thing at about the same time.
That's well possible. But I think the suggestion that Magnussen is just meant to stand still and take it is an odd one. I don't understand that argument. I'm sure we'll get emails. You can email me, spannersready@gmail.com. Always love getting your emails. Make sure you follow the show at Missed Apex F1 on Twitter. You can follow Matt at MattPT55. And you can find Jake Sanson everywhere by searching Jake Sanson. Jake, how is the commentary going? You've done a lot of FIA karting stuff, and you recently did some super duper karting.
I did, yes. So we have just come back from Sweden 2 weeks ago for the World Championships, where I discovered that Nico Rosberg is absolutely married to his mobile phone. Seriously, that dude is never off the thing. I got to meet Juan Pablo Montoya, who is a very, very nice bloke. Very, very nice bloke. Very, very nice bloke. I want to make that clear. He's a very nice bloke. And
hang on. Now the way you said that has made me think you don't think that.
No, he's a very nice bloke. And we also got to hang out with a couple of the sons of the superstar drivers. So Sebastian Montoya and Enzo Trulli. So, yes, Jarno's son is racing. Ralf Schumacher has his own race team out there now. And Felipe Massa, sixth year president, who actually knows what my name is now, which is quite impressive for a Formula One driver. None of them know who I am. So it's all very good. And then last week, of course, we had the closest finish in karting history. Argue with me at your peril.
Well, the closest finish would be exactly the same time.
No. Last week, PF International, the last round of the British Championships, we had 3 karts come across the line covered by 3 millimeters. That is worth a watch on YouTube. I promise you. The TDI Media YouTube channel. Go and check it out. It is genuinely the closest finish I've ever seen in motor racing.
Fantastic. Matt?
Well, apparently the chat room is so impressed with my talking about video frames that they've actually requested me to go back to tires.
The only thing worse than Matt talking about tyres is video frame rate. Of course, do follow Jake Sanson online at Jake Sanson and TDI Media, where he does a lot of his commentary work. We do have a bit more blame to apportion. Let's forget about Leclerc and Ericsson, because what can you say about Ericsson? 4 more races, lads. 4 more races to push. 2019 will be a richer place. But the big one was Sebastian Vettel coming up the inside into spoon of Max Verstappen. Big contact there, a defining moment. You know, maybe Hamilton would have won the championship anyway. I'm talking as if he's already won it. But maybe Hamilton would have increased his points lead anyway without that incident. But it really does seem to sum up Vettel's season for me. Do you put the blame at his doorstep, Matt?
Ericsson? Yes. He was behind. He hit Leclerc.
Sorry, you may have missed me skipping to Max versus Seb Vettel. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this is going to be interesting. And I'm going to point out here that I'm being entirely consistent with my same decision from Rosberg v. Hamilton, Barcelona, whatever year that was. In essence, as they exited the corner and headed towards Spoon, Verstappen's engine began clipping, meaning the regen was on, and he lost about 160 brake horsepower is the number that I saw bandied about online. It may not be entirely accurate, but it doesn't matter, because all of a sudden, Vettel was approaching him as if he had DRS into that corner. And at that point, some people say, well, why not follow him through, because you know how the advantage on the outside. But if you look at where Vettel was when the contact occurred, he was almost exactly beside Verstappen. And what happened was Verstappen just moved over to take the apex as normal. And he didn't really chop like Massey used to do. He didn't go all the way in. But there was not really enough room for Vettel to get around. There wasn't that car's width that we talk about being left on the straights, left in the apex. So, you know, if anything was really a racing incident, this is pretty much it. You know, it was, immovable wall and impenetrable object making contact, and Vettel came off worse. But if I have to apportion blame, and being a parent, I'm pretty good at that, I'm going to have to say I'm going to pin it on Max, because he knew his engine was cutting out and he knew that Vettel was there, and he moved over and just hoped that Vettel hadn't tried to do that thing that Vettel had done.
Oh, come on! Seriously? No, sorry. Sebastian Vettel came from about 400 yards back and banzaied into the corner. He thought he was Gilles Villeneuve in Dijon 1979. He thought he was that much of a god. Never make an overtaking move from that far back. Never. Absolute lunacy. Vettel written all over it at blame. Never in a billion years was that Max's fault.
Wow. Interesting. Now let's make Jake change his mind completely, like the weak flip-flop he is. No, I think I agree with you. It was such an optimistic move. But Matt has put that into a context that I didn't realise before. I didn't realise Max was struggling. So, perhaps Sebastian Vettel saw a little bit of blood, saw some weakness and vulnerability and went for it. But still, we know Max Verstappen heavily defends everything. Max Verstappen isn't in the title fight, had made that cheeky comment before the race when they said, are you going to interfere in the title fight? And he said, is it still a fight? He had that attitude written all over him. This is Max Verstappen. He's no wilting flower. Such an optimistic move when you've got the title on the line. Like you said, Matt, it was a Hail Mary where you didn't need a Hail Mary.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And to that end, you could say that it was the tiniest of miscalculations by Vettel as to where he would wind up when they got to the apex. But the thing for me is that Verstappen knew his car was down on power, and he knew that Vettel was coming. And yet he went there anyway. And I don't know, because the way it turned out, he lucked out. But it could have been he could have wound up with a puncture. He could have utterly ruined his race just as easily. And I would make the same argument with Rosberg, starting in the wrong engine mode, and his engine clipped, and here comes Hamilton and over onto the grass, and then the next thing you know, they're both out of the race. It wasn't necessarily great decision-making by either of them, but Vettel had such a huge advantage in terms of delta in the speed going into the corner. What do you do at that point? You're like, I'm so much faster. I think I got this. And I think Verstappen at that point, it was on him to be more circumspect because his car was not, his power unit was not 100% at that point.
I don't know. I want to defend him a bit, Jake, because Verstappen did leave enough room for Sebastian Vettel on the left-hand side. And there did seem to be a bit of understeer from Vettel.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. In answer to your question, Matt, it's very simple. What do you do in that situation? Easy. You wait 2 corners, you get him down the street, you bid to one that he That's what you do. Wait. This is one of the things I have an issue with Sebastian Vettel. In racecraft, he just doesn't have it. He doesn't have what it takes. If you put him in a strong car and put him in the lead, you'll never catch him. He's great over 1 lap. But in terms of racecraft, he cannot overtake. He cannot battle. He cannot duel with someone without going to pieces. He just can't hack it.
I mean, it's not a fluke, is it? It's not a one-off. We've seen it time and time again over the last two seasons. I said it earlier in the show, didn't I?
Yeah,
Paul Ricard.
Baku last year. Yeah. I keep coming back to this point. Baku last year. You can't do that by accident. That's not a coincidence. You don't just take your hands off the wheel and drive into the guy you're fighting with for the title just because you've got a bit of a rant on your head. You need to take a chill pill. Well, the guy can't hack it.
Well, actually, this year as well, it was quite an optimistic manoeuvre on a Bottas. It was certainly on. But at that point, he ended up snatching, locking up, and not losing just first place, also letting Lewis Hamilton through. Yeah, Paul Ricard, Monza. It's just been an absolute disaster for Vettel. So anyway, Matt, exciting changes in Formula B. So outside the top 6, we now have, and I've come under a lot of flack for defending Perez, but we now have definitive proof that he is the class act of the field and should replace Sebastian Vettel. Perez now leads Formula B.
Well, yeah, technically. He's tied with 2 other drivers, Hulkenberg and everybody's favorite, Magnussen, on 53 points directly. But that, because I guess he was the latest one to get there, or maybe, I'm not sure how they do the countbacks. Whatever, he's listed as being best of the rest at the moment, but all 3 of them have exactly the same amount of points. And this, I think we're going to just have to rule pretty much Hulkenberg out of this, because it appears to me Renault have utterly tossed in development for the rest of this season. So I don't think he has a chance. But Magnussen versus Perez and Force India versus Haas is going to be very interesting to watch over these last 4 races, because it could really go any direction. And it was bad news for Magnussen to not finish in the points at all and to have to retire. And it was also good news for Perez that his teammate got rocked with that three-place penalty at the start. Otherwise, we might not be talking about Perez being tied, because I believe Ocon would have finished ahead of him. Don't ask me.
I can answer your query as to why Perez is suddenly listed ahead of the other 2. It's because Perez has finished on the podium this season, and the other 2 have not. But Perez in the Force India, Sorry, I'm
so
not.
Perez
plugging.
officially best of the rest. Then,
Yeah, absolutely.
case closed. Like I defend Perez and I get mocked for it, but dude brings it home. And watch the chat room get angry. Email Matt, Matt at mrapexpodcast@gmail.squarespace/internet. All right then. But has doing consistently well now though, Matt. As an American, that must be pleasing for you. They are consistently up there. Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean quite often right in the mix for the best of the rest Grand Prix.
Yeah, and we didn't discuss it and where the race was won and lost, but really it should have been even more points. They made up 3 points on Renault this week, and with 4 races left, they are just 6 points back. So all they have to do is keep on finishing roundabout where they are, and they will take that place fourth away from Renault in the championship, and that would make me very, very happy. I would also be happy to see Magnussen in 7th place, but. That I think is maybe a little bit more dubious. We'll just have to see. It's very exciting times. And of course, if Force India had been able to maintain their points, it would have been even more exciting. And what we really need is for the front of the field to look like the midfield right now, because that's what Formula One needs. And I think, to me at least, that's why this race seemed to lack a certain amount of drama once Vettel spun, is because even though he's probably not going to win, you're like, oh, come on, get in there. Let's make this. Let's run it down. I want that same feeling as to when Hamilton and Rosberg lined up next to each other in the last race with the double points. And it was all down to that start, because that's what, as a sports fan, that's what you're dying to see. That's what you want from your sport. And it just, it's killing me that it's not there right now.
Do you know what I want from you?
Okay.
I want a summary of this very exciting and interesting Japanese Grand Prix, but I'm not going to let you ramble on forever. I'm just going to give you 60 seconds.
Lights out. Hamilton, good start. Vettel gets Hartley. Vettel gets Gasly. Vettel gets Grosjean. Verstappen off. Verstappen, Raikkonen, contact. Vettel gets Raikkonen. Leclerc, Magnussen, contact. Magnussen, puncture. Safety car. Restart. Verstappen on Bottas. Vettel on Verstappen, contact. Vettel spins. Vettel P19. Raikkonen pits. Verstappen pits. Ricciardo pits. Hamilton pits. Vettel pits. Fast forward while Vettel passes a bunch of midfielders. Leclerc off. Leclerc out. Virtual safety car. Virtual safety car off. Perez gets Grosjean. Grosjean convinced Perez cheated. Verstappen on Bottas. Verstappen not on Bottas. Bottas misses chicane. Verstappen on Bottas. Verstappen not on Bottas. Sainz gets Gasly. Checkers. Hamilton wins. Night time for trumpets.
Oh, trumpets, you're so brave. I hope you did get some sleep in the end.
I just want every single Formula One official video highlights video to be done like that, with Matt Trumpets calling it like that. I would so watch the video just of the 60 seconds done like that. It would be brilliant.
Well, you know the people. Start talking.
Well, they did start doing a race in 60 seconds, didn't they, shortly after we started? I'm sure it's complete coincidence. Just like Magnussen's, timing, there was probably just one video frame between our race in 60 and their race in 60. But, Matt, you're my favourite of the two, to be honest. Wow. So there we go. Let's give out some awards then. We give out our terribly named, in 6 years, how have we not come up with a better name for this? Because I said driver of the weekend one week, and you said, well, can I do something else, not a driver? So I went, all right then, what's your thing of the weekend? And that is stuck for 6 years. Matt Trumpets, what is your thing of the weekend?
All right. I'm going to invite the hatred this weekend because it's sort of a tie between just Mercedes in general. But mostly, I got to say, Vettel's start, that first lap where he made up all those positions, that was a thing, and it was really exciting to watch. So, yeah, I'm going to go with that.
I'm going to give my thing of the weekend a cumulative award, really, to Max Verstappen for just consistently banging in results in this part of the season and putting himself basically up as the main contenders to the Mercedes. Keeps frustrating Sebastian Vettel, keeps putting himself in places that he doesn't deserve to be when Daniel Ricciardo isn't quite doing it.
My thing of the weekend is going to be the other side of the Red Bull garage. It's going to be Dan Ricciardo.
How?
For turning the honey badger war cry of misery and frustration on Saturday after qualifying into a drive that saw him beat both Ferraris. I mean, that's just awesome.
And the chat room would like to throw in at this point that Kimi's haikus could possibly be the thing of the weekend. And I think I might have to agree that I might have to change my mind on that, because
it was pretty good. I will take umbrage with you though, Jake, for your thing of the weekend. The war cry, that was not a war. I know Daniel Ricciardo is like the most loved guy on earth, but he was walking down the pit lane with a camera quite clearly next to him and microphones and crews and everything, and he just shouted like a massive expletive on live TV through his helmet, clear as day. That's not cool. That's really not cool. And he just screamed in frustration, this guttural kind of human scream, but latest in the series of react as if Lewis Hamilton did it was kind of evident there. And I did go to a couple of forums where this post had been posted, and the comments were all, "Oh, poor Daniel Ricciardo. This really shows the frustration." I'm thinking, wow, what other driver would get away with that? So what I did was I started putting comments in based on what people would have said if Lewis Hamilton had done that. So I was putting in the comments going, petulant, child, this is why he'll never be as great as Senna. And that made a lot of people very mad, Jake.
Oh, okay, so I didn't actually hear the word he said in that guttural thing. That's probably because I was watching the Channel 4 coverage. So every time they show a video of what happened the day before, what's his face, Gethin Jones or whatever his name is, he always talks over the important bit. So I didn't actually realize he'd said a swear word, in which case, how dare you, naughty boy. But still, I still think, a drive from 15th to 4th, beating both Ferraris in the process and making them look decidedly average on a weekend when they decided to put some cheap stickers on the car to make them look better. Yeah, very, very impressive from Ricciardo still.
Fair enough. All right, let's do the bad thing award, which is our Missed Apex award.
Oh, no, you missed the Apex.
Matt, who missed the Apex for you?
Yeah, is the Inter's Ferrari qualifying.
Dropped it. But isn't it just one of those things? Didn't they? They did a coin flip and it didn't work out. Why so harsh?
Because who else flipped that coin with even one of their drivers?
It's a great point. Chat room, tell us who missed the Apex for you. Let's go to Jake Sanson. Jake, who missed the Apex this weekend? It's going to be Vettel, isn't it? You are the biggest Vettel hater on the panel.
I am the biggest Vettel hater on the panel, but it's not Vettel. It is Ferrari as a whole entity. They put cheap stickers on the car and bigged us up for 3 days thinking, oh, it's going to be amazing. No, it's not. It's going to look cheap and tacky and horrible. The Kimi haikus, did they really think that was going to actually help in terms of personality? They sent the Ferraris out in qualifying, wets in the dry, slicks in the wet. It's like, guys, seriously, look out the window. And then, of course, you've also got the fact that they messed up Raikkonen's race strategy. They messed up Vettel by not telling him to calm down. They just look decidedly average. They look like Jordan in the 1990s is what they looked like.
Wow, okay, slate Jordan in there, just a random drubbing for Jordan. My Missed Apex award goes to Fernando Alonso. I didn't see the contact between him and Stroll. In fact, they did show one bit where Alonso ended up going off. I think Stroll might have forced him wide, and they both ended up getting penalties. But when Alonso finally got past Stroll later in the race, I don't know if you saw it, but he swerved all the way from one side of the straight and dived back in across as a show of anger at well over 100 miles an hour to kind of show Lance Stroll that he was angry. Firstly, don't do that in a race car. I can't believe that didn't get a penalty, because that was clearly a very aggressive move. Could have gone terribly wrong. What a chance he took there. And also, surely Alonso should be better than letting Lance Stroll get to him. Trumpets.
Yeah, I agree that I was laughing so hard, like at the races, at the notices coming up. Alonso gets a 5-second penalty for gaining an advantage going off, and Stroll gets a 5-second penalty for sending him there. And then they showed the replay, And basically, coming into the final chicane, Stroll drove him off the road. And then rather than taking to the escape route and coming back on, he just basically drove over the grass, bounced. He went total rally cross and wound up getting like a 4 or 5 second advantage out of it. And they both got penalized, and they both pretty much deserved it. And it was highly, highly entertaining at the time, I have to say.
It's weird, Jake.
Can I just say that was my favorite bit of the whole race? It really was. And it's disastrous because 25 years ago, these two teams were the kings of the sport. It was Mansell and a Williams, Senna and a McLaren, and they were at each other's throats in the same way that, Mercedes and Ferrari are now. How badly do things have to get before both teams realize they need to change everything? And I mean everything about what they are doing. This is woefully inadequate. The two major remaining privateers in, independent garagistas of the ancient tradition of Formula One, if you like, that are still, justifying their right to be there, are looking as bad as Minardi and Tyrrell did 20 years ago. This is appalling.
All right, let's go to our pony award.
Daddy, I want a pony. And I want it now.
I'm going to give it to Sebastian Vettel. Not quite pony-ish, as in he didn't have a tantrum. He wasn't being petulant. But I think his radio at the end of the race was a fail, because the first thing he comes up and he says, yeah, I don't know what to say. I think it's already been said. It's all already been said. No, it hasn't all already been said. You haven't even got out of the car yet. And then he sort of tries to explain his little incident. And he said a quote that was so close to Senna's quote, it makes me think that he doesn't know the Senna quote. Because if you knew the Senna quote, which is if you no longer go for a gap, you're no longer a racing driver, you wouldn't then say something really similar, which is what he did. He said, if you don't go for a gap that's there, then you may as well go home. So I don't, you would make it substantially different, or you would just quote the Senna one, wouldn't you? So that makes me think Vettel doesn't know that Senna quote.
Yeah, I'm going for Verstappen for pony of the day. Yeah, definitely, for blaming the rules rather than his own inefficiencies at going off of the chicane.
You really want us to lose all our Dutch listeners, don't you?
No, I just really, really want Max Verstappen to be taken down a peg.
Trumpets, do you have a pony?
Yeah, I do. Although I have to say, as much as you can slate him for going well, Raikkonen should have just waited for me to rejoin the track safely, and then he could have just followed me, which, again, provided so much entertainment at that point in the race with the safety car. It was just delightful. So he really is, in some ways, becoming the Raikkonen of the grid in terms of his radio transmissions. It just, you just know if it's got Max's name attached to it, it's going to be some kind of entertainment coming up. But I'm actually going to go with Leclerc for slating Magnussen as he's on his way into the pit box and calling him Magnussen. What did he say? He will always be stupid or something like that.
He is and will always be stupid. Yeah. So harsh.
It's oh, come on, man. It's not. But all in the heat of the moment and all in good fun. But yeah, I would definitely toss my pony award that direction.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that with Leclerc. It's kind of why didn't he let me past? Why didn't he just let me past? I moved my steering wheel. I changed line to go round him. Why did he also do that to block me? Yeah, so yeah. Oh, of course, heat of the moment. Absolutely, heat of the moment. I would hate anyone to have recordings of what I'm yelling and shouting underneath the helmet in a go-kart. But this has been Missed Apex Podcast for the Japanese Grand Prix. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us. We will have shows throughout the next 2 weeks. Make sure you also join us in Austin, and we'll be probably recording that show on the Monday evening rather than staying up and trying to do a 2 o'clock in the morning recording, which we've done in the past. But I don't know. We'll have a little bit of a chat about that. Obviously, it doesn't affect Matt. Does affect me. So make sure you join us for then. Whenever we're on, you can find that out by going to YouTube and searching for Missed Apex Podcast and subscribing. Also follow the show on Twitter and Facebook by searching Missed Apex Podcast. Until next time, remember that wounds heal, chicks dig scars, and glory lasts forever. This was Missed Apex with Spanners, Matt and Jake. Okay, so in this area here, I'm adding in a little 6-minute segment of the sim racing that me and Alex and Chris did. But when that fades out, right, I'm going to go, and Matt, now, not even late into the post show, but actually after an additional segment, an all-time record for forgetting this segment. What is this week's
Comment of the Week?
Once again, the chat room has fallen for my hilarious and deliberate comedy skit.
Okay, so we have a couple of categories to choose from. We have the technical issues at the start of the podcast, which looks like Wishy Egg is Ferrari running this tonight is one. And
wait a minute, how did they
Ferrari
see?
Tech Department.
How did they see our tech problems? We did that all. Oh my god, they didn't see what we actually had behind the scenes, where we lost Kyle and Steve before we even started.
No, but we referenced it right when we came on the live stream, and then Rob stand-in says maybe they need Ferrari Tech Department to sort out camera stuff. Then there's a whole category devoted to Jake's hat. Tim Garbasiak says, "Are you Indiana Jones? If not, don't wear a fedora." Jamie Ryan inquires, "Is that a Snapchat filter?" And then, of course, New European in with Vettel choked on a spoon, and low stealth Verstappen. Why are these other cars on track? Sam Watley would like to know compared to what? Killing David Essex, referencing one of our discussions in the middle and how important Vettel's mistakes are, I believe.
David Essex is alive and well. I'm going to get T-shirts printed out with Missed Apex podcast. David Essex lives.
And then we go with Low Stealth saying, thing of the week is Sky having to apologize every time someone curses. Third Quick responding with, he shouted MGUK. Clever. And then finally, EMH 2212, it sounded like he, that would be Vettel, was trying his best not to plagiarize for his essay by rewording the quote slightly.
There we go. Who's the winner, Matt?
Oh, I think, that's such a tough one. Usually you have a response, and I'm going to have to go with Sam Watley this week. Compared to what? No? Too much? Too soon?
No, we'll do it. What was he saying? What was the
Compared
quote? Say it again. Sorry, say it again. I ruined it.
Sorry. Sam Watley, compared to what? Killing David Essex.
Wow. Yeah, I think a little too soon. Git. Fine. Take it.
Comment of the Week.
That's a wrap, folks. Yes, sorry, it didn't quite come across. It's my fault for talking over you. Yes. Okay, so then, that's going to take some explanation for the people in the live chat who don't tune in to me on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire. I was thinking about David Cassidy. Right? David Cassidy was my mother-in-law's childhood crush. And so she had like all the posters and everything on her wall. So I'm playing a track, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is David Cassidy. I said, oh yeah, and of course my mother-in-law's favourite, and of course David Cassidy sadly passed away earlier this year. Sorry, I said David Essex passed away earlier this year. I don't know, there was just there was a disconnect in my head, and so I just said David Essex. The tune starts playing. The producer looks like he's in a panic, right? And he's running around. And then he comes over the tannoy thing and he goes, dude, he's not dead. I'm like, David Cassidy is definitely dead. He's like, yeah, but David Essex, who you said the name of and played the song of, is alive and well. On an unrelated topic, I have figured out how to make people text into a radio station.
Thank you so much for that. Your noble sacrifice for the cause is utterly noted.
I'm just hoping that the next track you get requested is Knock on Wood.
Yeah. So I've learned some important lessons. And look, I'm not doing down like how serious that is. Like I felt really, really bad, and I did sincerely apologise. You can't fail to see the funny side of it, obviously. David Essex is alive and well and gorgeous, as many texters told me. So I am just never.
You realise that David Essex is going to get a message tonight from his agent going, why is there a hoax about you dying? You're not dead.
No, look.
What's going on?
All that kind of
F1 fans seem to think you're dead. F1 fans? But I did a movie about motorbikes. Why are they talking about F1?
I've made all the clarifications. It's fine. I'm going to have a T-shirt printed up. But yeah, I mean, it is a relatively serious thing to say. We corrected it very quickly. They didn't seem too upset. You know, I mean, if you'd have said...
I can't recommend that movie, though, actually. Silver Dream Racer, if you're a motorbike racing fan. That was a good movie. There are a few knockers, you know, unprotected, so just beware.
Beware, or like, is that an incentive, or are you warning us?
Well,
I don't know
depends
which
on your
one.
view, I suppose, but it's MotoGP, so yeah, kind of.
So speaking of that kind of TV program, where they kind of throw the knockers in just for that.
Oh, sorry, I thought we were talking about motorsport.
Just for the sake, yeah. But you go, oh, well, why would a film about motorcycles have that? Right, Vikings on Amazon. Have you seen it?
What?
Have you seen Vikings on Amazon?
Gone?
Yeah, but no, because it's just got the plot stagnates, and then it's almost like they know that it's got boring, so they go, let's have some knockers, and then they just so like the series is so bad, but I got hooked in season 1 to the point that I couldn't stop. I was so grateful when season 5 ended. I was like, oh good, I'm free. I can stop watching this now.
Can I be controversial and say that I'm fed up of Game of Thrones, and even the knockers can't tempt me back? Sorry,
idiot. They
can't tempt me back. I'm sorry. There needs to be a plot. You can't just be killing everybody.
I don't know, Honda's new engine?
No, that's for the main podcast.
That?
That's for the main podcast. This is Wafflecast. What are you on about? But
we barely talked about it, but it was a Spec C engine, and there was a moment where Daniel Ricciardo was trying to pass Pierre Gasly and couldn't until he had DRS. Just like a thing.
It's hilarious. If that Honda turns up next season and Red Bull and Toro Rosso are just bang on it, like, that is just hilarious, because Honda got so much, like, big, like, I'll go give Honda the biggest hug in the world, like a big corporate hug. Going, yeah. Well done. And I'm sorry I doubted you. I'm sorry I briefly thought McLaren did have the best shot. I'm sorry.
Do you know, I am loving the fact that they are smoking McLaren into the dust, because I believe I did say 12 months ago, no, don't leave McLaren. Don't kick Honda out. They are helping you. You are spitting on their reputation. The whole point of getting back with Honda was because you trusted their reputation and it would all come rosy. You're just impatient. Deal with it. And get a new aerodynamicist.
Go on then, tell us all about it. What do you think the chances are then, Matt? Is this going to happen? Are Honda going to just be like amazing next season? Because you've been saying this for quite a long time, and you were heavily defending Honda in the McLaren era.
Much like Mercedes has always been the fastest car, the potential for Honda has always been there. And now they have a solid partner to work with. I think that Renault will more than have its handful next season. And that by the season after, it's going to be Ferrari and Mercedes that will need to be careful, because I see Honda. What seems to be the difference is the relationship is more collegial between Honda and Red Bull. Honda is accepting some help from Red Bull, and they're working together. And I think this is what became missing from the Renault venture with Red Bull, especially once Renault took the team back over. And I see Honda. I see Renault having a steeper hill to climb than Honda, because right now Honda looks like it is caught up with and maybe even slightly past the Renault power unit.
I'm really sorry to break up the conversation. I need to disappear. Apologies, but do please carry on the Wafflecast without me, and please keep the dodgy hat comments coming in, because I do love them.
I'm just scrolling back up the chat room, and
no, seriously,
I can't believe there's people who thought.
You want me on your show, you get the hat as well.
I can't believe there's people who thought I'd forgotten comment of the week. Unbelievable, Jake. Thank you so much for just making yourself available, because actually,
no problem. And if anybody wants to catch me in person, go to Donington Park next week, because we are going to do the season finale of TCR UK. You know, that thing that's a bit like the British Touring Cars, but isn't. I can't believe I said that. TCR UK, it's better than the BTCC. It is, absolutely. There may not be as many cars this year, but next year there will be.
On the 21st? Sunday the 21st?
Saturday and the Sunday.
I'll see you on Sunday the 21st, I think, at Milton Keynes.
Yes,
for round 9 of Daytona
D-Max thing for the penultimate time.
Oh, don't! I'm so sad that it's being cancelled next year and that I don't get the money for doing it. I mean that it's cancelled next year. I didn't mention the money. Just as I've gone part-time in engineering as well. Thanks a lot. Thanks a bunch.
I love the European. He says, I need to go to the mirror in the bathroom. No, I need to call one of my bosses. But thank you for making me feel even more inferior. Thank you.
See you later. Bye, Jake.
Love it. Love this respect. Thank you all. Bye.
Remove him from group. He's all right. Jake. Yeah. Decent value for money. I'm scrolling through the chat room. There's no way I can keep track on it and host. I occasionally do flick to it.
It's hard for me too, man.
Looks like there was some beef in there. Sandra and Rob. Looks like there was some beef going on.
You know how it is? People get really wound up in their supportive drivers, and they say something that somebody else takes the wrong way, or maybe the right way, and
I like that. But what, guys? Look, Rob, Sandra, Baha, and there's a lot of passionate people in there. Just as long as you tell me, convince me that like there's a mutual respect there, and you understand that you're all gunning for your guy, because that is sport. I don't know why F1 holds itself to a different standard. Every other sport, people who support the other team are just scum. They're like the scum of the earth, and that's okay, because as soon as you all take your supporter strips off and go into the office, it's all fun and games again. Believe it or not, I work with an Ipswich Town fan, and we work together, and it works somehow. But he is definitely scum. Like that's just how it is. Good. As long as you all love each other. Would I have felt the same way about the Magnussen move had it not been for the fact that I'm Mag Fossey? I think so. Because I think we've set a precedence, haven't we? But if Verstappen's allowed to do it, everyone's allowed to do it. If he's allowed to defend late, everyone's allowed to defend late. Otherwise, why bother?
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's defending late and there's defending unfairly. Leclerc felt like it was unfair, and that's why he was so angry. But if you look at the actual incident, and to me it goes back to somebody in the chat said it was like 50 frames per second. If you look at a single frame and the amount of time that represents,
yeah, it's nothing. Yeah.
You can't ding Magnussen for that move at all. You can't. It was unfortunate for Leclerc. And as we saw with the Hamilton and the moves last week, sometimes the view from the cockpit can make it look worse than it actually was. Huh?
Who are the rivals of Ipswich? Well, the closest geographical league team are Colchester United, somewhat minnows in the British top four divisions, but that was my team growing up. So Colchester United, I love it. EMH, Ipswich Town, that's not even in the top 5% of teams with town in the name. I like this from Fennec. 2K1, who is Clappers in the Slack group. I haven't dared contact the rest of my family today. They are all Ferrari fans, and right now, I don't dare say hi. As they take it as gloating. They go, yeah. There was a comment in the Missed Apex Facebook group. Someone said, "Am I the only one who delights in the fact that it's Vettel that keeps blowing it?" And one of my colleagues, I don't know if he's in here today, Dan. He came up to me at work and he goes. I think it was, there's been so many mistakes, I can't remember which Vettel mistake it was after, but he came up to me and he said, the fact that Vettel's throwing it away himself makes it better. But that's the kind of, that is just pure fanboyism, and that's fine. I think that's okay in sport. Why ridicule Vettel on a slowdown lap for not quoting verbatim? Rob, I didn't do that. Rob, honestly, you are proper Vet Fossey. I ridiculed what he was doing. Firstly, for trying to shut down the argument. Clearly, he's made a massive error, and he comes on the radio and he says, we don't need to talk. Basically, he said, we don't need to talk about it. It's like my daughter does it. No, we don't need to talk about it. It's all right. Don't need to talk about it. It's already been said. Nothing had been said yet. Of course, you have to talk about it. He tried to shut down that conversation, and then the sort of uncanny valley quote to Senna. That's what made it ridiculous. It was ridiculous. There we go. But Rob, I can see you getting upset in the chat. There's no need to get that upset. We are always going to have opinions on this show about drivers and about incidents, and we've never really shied away, Matt, have we, of saying we think that guy messed up. Who are we to say really? Because we're not racing drivers, we've got no racing experience. But it's just what sports fans do.
It is, and the narratives, and the narratives are what hook us into the sport. That's why lining up at the last race of the season with it really 100% in the balance, that's what we live with. The unpredictability of it all is what brings us back. When the sport gets predictable, that's when people go off and do other things. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Vettel had a great race and a terrible race, all in the same race, and it was fantastic. It was incredible drama to watch him.
Yeah,
Get so close and then lose it, and then try and claw his way back.
But he's like Hamilton, off track, on track. You know what did we say about Hamilton last week? He wears his heart on his tongue.
Yeah,
I love that quote. I can't remember who said it. I think it was a Finnish guy. But Vettel is like that in the car. He wears his heart on his sleeve in the car to a fault. You don't see Hamilton doing that anymore.
Yeah, no, he's learning, he's evolving.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, look, we're gonna go. I think Matt, you need sleep. Did the beginning of the show take you by surprise? Because I've got here an edit. I've got one edit here that says edit out 7 minutes. Matt asleep. That's what I've got.
Well, you asked me about Vettel showing the threads of unraveling in Q1, and I'm like, what the fuck even happened in Q1? I have no idea.
He spun in Q1.
Huh?
He spun in Q1.
Oh, well, if you had mentioned his spin, that would have helped. I was like,
sorry. Oh, well.
He'd already said
the magic of the edit. The magic of the edit.
No, I had no idea what you were referencing based on the notes, and I was like, I really don't know what you're talking about. So I'll just say other things. I know you're going to have to edit it out. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
But qualifying was the worst because
lots of edits today. Loads, a full page.
I'll explain qualifying because I have to get up at 5:30 in the morning for my kid to get to school on time. And then I had to drive to work, and I was at work till 11 o'clock at night. I didn't get home till 12:30. I had dinner, and then I did qualifying from 2 to 3 and tried to write the report after that. And I don't think I was to bed till 4:30. So I don't really remember a whole lot about qualifying other than the couple of big things that I chucked into the notes because I assume we weren't really going to talk about it all that much. I didn't go back and
fair enough.
Read carefully. No,
fair enough.
Anyway.
All right, cool. Oh, no. Thanos is getting a grip on me. I'm disappearing. No. I faded myself out cleverly using the chroma key. And I just watched that Avengers movie, and I didn't like it. It made me angry. It made me angry that I have to wait another year to find out what's happening. Bye, live stream. Oh, hang on. They can't see me. Let me come back. Let me un-Thanos. There we go. I'm back. Okay, bye.